We are live. I get to say that. It is actually the truth. Welcome back to the Breaking Down the Level 1 series, everybody. Thank you guys for tuning in. And before we start, and before I introduced my spirit animal on the show, who's been here before, if you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel and you just stop what you're doing right now, go smash the subscribe button, smash like, put a comment, follow us, Instagram, YouTube, all the places, because there's lots of cool stuff to come in 2023. But more importantly, I am here with the great and powerful Denise
Oz.
Thomas.
The Oz.
The great and powerful Oz, more commonly known as Denise Thomas. And today we are going to talk all things programming, breaking down the Level 1 manual. But Denise, how are you?
I'm fantastic. I have to say, every time I come on your show, that intro makes me jump. Dun, dun, dun.
It's our hype song. It's our hype song. This is our if we were playing a sport, this is us running out of the tunnel.
Hey, the UK.
Oh, from the UK.
Dan, he just did a CDP course with Rob Lawson.
Oh, look at that. Denise knows everybody. Everybody knows Denise. Denise knows everybody.
Dan.
But we don't need to give Denise's credentials, because if you follow the show, she's been on it probably at least 4 times. However, very much known for coach development, for lesson planning, but a little less known for your skill set and background in the programming world. You have coached some high-level athletes. You have written your fair share of programming. How long have you been dabbling in the programming space?
Really, since I started unofficially, but probably over probably 10 years, like maybe 11 years, is when I first started.
And then have you coached some games athletes?
Yeah.
Or programmed for, if you will, however you state that?
Yeah. So we had a team at Reebok, and I would program team workouts for them. There are a couple of, I haven't done any like individual programming for games athletes, I don't think. But it was more for the team stuff. I've taken part in a lot of games programming because I was workout bullied into it, but
because you were just present there for the beating
all the time. Yeah. But that's not that. I wouldn't say that's my superpower. I love doing it. And I think if I dove into it, I could be around the right people. It'd be great, but that's not where I spend most time programming.
The right people being me, the wrong people being Jason Ackerman.
Jay, who's not straightening his arms on that kettlebell swing.
Right.
I see.
Yeah. And for the record, we do have a level 4 on this call.
That's
and
right.
We have 2 flow masters on this call. So there's that. So there will be no Jason Ackerman on this call, which is better for everybody. But so we're going to dive in. We're going to dive into the level 1 trainer manual. We're going to talk programming, and I will set the stage for this, Denise, and then I will kind of punt to you. But before we go in here, I think it is worth acknowledging, because I personally am really deep back into programming at the gym right now, because we're playing around some what I think is pretty fun stuff. But I think a lot of times there's a misunderstanding when we're talking about the CrossFit affiliate, right? So we're going to talk theoretical programming, right? So essentially we're going to talk about programming in a vacuum with regard to understanding programming, but then we have to take this and we have to bring it into the affiliate. And I think we have to acknowledge inside of the affiliate, your product is your program, which is not the same as your service. Right. We will. Thank you, Final Call. We will get something accomplished because Jay, is not going to be on the call. And I think there's a lot of confusion with that. Like, I think a lot of people think the product is the coaching, and it's not. The product is a commodity. You can get programming anywhere. People can get programming online, right? That is commoditized. You can get it anywhere. You can get all sizes, shapes, and flavors of it. You still need to understand and have a really solid product, but it needs to be paired with a really solid service, which is the coaching aspect. And those 2 things don't really exist independently of each other unless you run a different format. But if for a CrossFit affiliate, there needs to be cohesion with those. And that's a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. Because programming, at least with regard to the level 1 is where the rubber meets the road. So A, give us your general thoughts on programming, and then we'll dive into the weeds here a little bit. But like programming in general, do you like it? Do you dislike it? How do you see it in the CrossFit space as a whole?
I love programming, and that doesn't mean I'm the best at it, but I love it, and I love the art of it, right? That's what we say, the art is in the programming. And it really doesn't matter who I'm programming for. Ultimately, the right program is the one that gets the results you want for your goals. So I'm in the CrossFit space. So for me, that's making people fitter generally, increasing their work capacity across broad time and modal domains. And I've done all kinds of programming inside CrossFit, outside CrossFit. And I think that the CrossFit program is so elegant and beautiful, and the way that we program is so elegant and beautiful, and it works. But I think it's really hard for people to see how simple it is and just keep it at that, knowing who you're programming for. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I've gone through the weeds and out the weeds and up the tree and down the tree. And we've got to turn this up here, and we definitely need to add that there. And now I've been in it a while, and I've stood back, and I've actually coached at a bunch of different gyms, got out of my echo chamber, and seen what's out there. It just comes back to us being the general people, right? We want to do all these things very, very well. And if we just do that with these elegant combinations, we're going to have some really fit and healthy people. And I think the more that we try to, add to it and make it more challenging than it needs to be, we'll lose insight of who we are as a community and what our program stands for, which is the generalist aspect. So you just stand back and you just look at somebody doing an overhead squat, and you're like, oh, we should probably spend some more time on that. How are we going to do that? Well, we got to maybe coach a little more, teach a little more. But we can't do that currently if we're doing all these other things. So it's sexy to put stuff in, but the results really lie within the elegance and the beauty of how simple it is. So I got a lot of thoughts on it, to be honest, but that's where I'm at right now is that.
We got a lot of time. All right. So how about this? Somebody who's listening to this who doesn't write programming, can you give the listeners here your thoughts on, regardless of who writes let's just say that you're a coach at the gym and you do not write the programming. Why is it important to have a solid, if not really deep grasp of programming?
If you start to understand programming, whether you program or not, you'll be a better coach. Because if you want to bring something to the table as a coach, you have to understand the journey of the program so that you can bring a good teaching plan and a good lesson plan and help people get better. If you're showing up and you don't know what your product is, how can you deliver a good service? You cannot. So if you're not programming, and I remember when I first got asked to do some programming at Reebok, I was terrified. I'm like, oh, I'm going to mess it up. What if they don't like it? What if it's, too long, too short? And I was just told, just start. And I used the template from the level 2 so that I didn't have any biases, and I made it simple. And what happened as a result of that is I put more into my lesson plans, and I was able to bring more to my coaches. So I would say, even if you're not programming, take the programming that you're currently coaching and start to analyze it and pick it apart and look at, oh, what did we do on Monday? And why would we do that on not just Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but across like a 2-week span of how many times did we go below parallel and how many times did we go overhead? And, oh, we did this on Tuesday overhead, and now I want to try giving them this on following Friday overhead. And you just start to peel back and see that the program for what it really is. And it makes you critically think about the design and how to scale and all the things. I honestly wish I'd started programming sooner, to be honest.
I think out of just pure necessity, I started programming. I think I programmed out of the gate for something to the tune of like 5 years nonstop. which was good and bad because I had, you get programming blindness and you look at spreadsheets too long and all of a sudden you're programming, thrusters 14 times that week and you don't realize it. But I do agree with you that it definitely, the understanding of the product really allows you to wrap your brain around, like, what does delivery look like? How is this going to unfold for people? How can I make sure that I scale these workouts and make sure that I put everybody over the target for whatever that intended stimulus is for today? I don't think you can do that if you don't understand programming, regardless of whether you write programming or not. I just think you will miss the mark far more often than not, which is not a good class experience. If you're talking about running a business, it's not going to be good for your business. So, okay. So next question, before we kind of dive into the weeds here, generally speaking, when somebody's going to start writing programming, what should their overarching guiding tenet be, right? Forget like what templates you're going to use and all of that. Like, how do I, what's the word I'm looking for? What's the damn light when you're at sea? I should know this. I was in the Navy. You're, Cody, chime in here. You know what I'm talking about. Cody's in the background. I'm blowing this right now and I can't think of this. Anyway.
The light in the sea?
Yeah. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, what should that guiding tenet be when you're writing programming?
Well, I know you said not necessarily the template, but I really do think that helps. So in the level 1 manual, it has the theoretical template for CrossFit programming. And it says theoretical because it doesn't mean that everything perfectly fits.
Lighthouse. Sorry, just came to me.
Oh, that was such a hard word. That was such a hard word. The light in the water.
Yeah, it's a star. Yeah, somebody's just like beacon. People are chiming in the chat. They're like North Star.
You
Lighthouse, everybody. Lighthouse.
You focus till you got that. Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do have to have some kind of template because there has to be a structure, but structure isn't routine, right? We say that is the routine is going to give you a little, the structure is going to give you freedom, but it's really helpful to just start with this macro view. And this is all from the level 1 of you're not going to perfectly fit into this template if it doesn't make sense, right? And we'll get to that in a second. So in the level 1 guide, it talks about the macro view from a modality standpoint. And this is literally how I would start and how I did. You've got your 3 components, right? Monostructural, gymnastics, weightlifting. And on day 1, pick one of those 3, anyone, weightlifting. Great. Right now, we're not talking about what that is. It's just a W under day 1, right? Monday. Day 2, let's do the other 2. Gymnastics and monostructural, right? And we're not saying what they are, how many reps, any of the time. Yeah, beautiful. And then day 3, we'll do all of them. So essentially, we've got a single, couplet, triplet, and then we've got this CrossFit.com-esque like off day, right? But let's just say we didn't have that. You could just then go to G, right? Day 5 could be 4. And then we do it again. Now this time we pick another modality, and this one's gymnastics, and we do the other 2, and then we do all 3. And the next time we pick the last one, and we keep going through. And the reason why this is theoretical is because you can on day 6 do a triplet. We're not saying you can't, but does it make sense for fitness and for your space and for your community and all these things that you need to look at, which is why any program you follow of these third-party resources, there's no one that will fit your gym unless you're paying for that service. Like they're going to give you a template and a guide, and then you're going to have to turn knobs up and down depending on what your thing is. So the structure here, right? But this is, and the seemingly routine, but not really, because if we pass that out over a month, it's not going to always look like this. You can switch maybe on week 2. We'll do a couplet instead of doing a triplet, instead of doing a single. But if we stick to this first cycle here, Monday, day 1, monostructural. What is that? What could that be? Give me a workout, Fern.
Like purely monostructural, like for that day. So I would do like a 2K row.
2K row, beautiful. What else could we do?
You could do a 5K run.
5K run, 10K run half a marathon. I mean, whatever you want.
You could
Something that's
do 10 rounds of 30-second air assault max effort
horrible.
sprints with 5 minutes rest in between.
That's horrible. But it fits, right? And then on day 2, pick a gymnastic movement.
Ring muscle ups.
Muscle ups and the weightlifting.
Power clean.
Power clean. So we've got a pull from the ground, right? And then we've got a pull from below to above. We've got one with weight, one without. We still haven't gone into the loading, like the weight, the reps, the time domain, anything like that. We're just saying those are the 2 movements we're going to do. Day 3, pick 3 more.
Am I picking off of day 3 here? So the monostructural gymnastics, weightlifting, we'll have it there. Okay, so then we'll do ski erg for monostructural gymnastics. We will do a box jump. So we'll go open and close of the hip, and then weightlifting we'll stick with that theme and do a kettlebell swing.
Perfect. So now we've got a pull from the hip, we've got a jump right below to above, and we've got a pull, right? Let's just say. So we're looking at different functions via modality, and we do that across the other up to day 12. And all you're doing is like, well, what did we do the day before? What's going to make sense for? Remember, who are we programming for? Not the minority, not the outliers, not your specialists, meaning your games athletes or your very high level competitors. That's a different conversation. But who are we generally programming for, and what movement functions, times, loads, etc., is going to push their levels and help them train another day, right?
So what you're referring to here, because I like to clarify the statement, is this kind of this general statement, program for the best, scale for the rest type format. But could you provide, because like I hate it when people attach that and then shit on CrossFit programming, because I think that statement needs a little bit more context. So when you think about that statement, what does that mean to you in the context of your gym?
Right. So great, because the best is not Matt Fraser, Tia Claire Toomey. Like, yes, they are the best, right? And Jason Fernandez. Put you in there.
Obviously, right? No ego, but yes.
So this is different gym to gym, and this is why you cannot look at somebody else's programming.
That's why I asked the question, because I wanted you to clarify this, because this is an important concept with regard to that idea.
Yeah, because you can't look at somebody else's programming and be like, that's awesome. We've heard the story a million times. Are you sure? Because for that month, nobody got better. Okay. And that you could look at something seemingly boring. People got better. How did they get better? They got stronger. They PR'd, blah, blah, blah. So gym to gym, who is the best? Well, you want to think about in any given workout, could a small percentage of your gym do it? So let's say it's a workout that has a heavy squat, snatch, and muscle ups, and it's like 20 muscle ups. It's like 20, 15, 10 muscle ups, and we'll go. I don't know. After each round,
that's a lot of muscle ups. I'm just saying.
Not for you. I know. I'm just spitballing.
I know.
It's a heavy squat snatch, right? So maybe it's one heavy squat snatch at let's call it 245, right? So you do 20 muscle ups, 1, 2, right? It's very games oriented. It's like, so
that is games level programming,
right? That's probably not going to be a good workout program for the best in your gym unless you have across your population maybe 1, 2, maybe 5% of people that could do it. So what would that really look like? Well, maybe it's still the muscle ups. So a lot of people can do that amount of muscle ups, but maybe the weight on the snatch goes down. So essentially what you do when you're saying the best is, that was a horrible example of a workout, by the way, but you're saying, people in my gym do
maybe,
that?
but it does illustrate the point that I wanted you to highlight, which is with regard to that statement of program for the best, scale for the rest. It is within the context of your population in your affiliate, not the world, right? Which if you train a bunch of people from the old folks home, well, guess what? That needs to be applied in the context of your programming and how you roll that out, right? And I think I just wanted to bring that up because I do think that gets used I don't want to say like maliciously, but like I think people misunderstand that concept. We're talking about like applying what you know about your demographic that you train in your brick and mortar facility is who that statement applies to.
Right.
Not my gym or Denise's basement or CrossFit Reebok 1 or whatever, like to you, which requires a little bit more thought.
Yeah. Yes. People in your gym have to be able to do it because we need to push them. Now, those workouts, there has to be workouts in there too that a large percentage of your gym can do as written. And that's good for morale reasons too, so you can look at these as I would, sprinkling something on the top, but yeah, your best to have to be able to do it. So I would start with you've got your modality here.
Mm-hmm.
Now we can get into the details of it, right? So we can start to overlay maybe a time template. So we've got your monostructural, we've got your gymnastics weightlifting, your monostructural gymnastics weight. I don't know if you can pull up the thing again, but yeah. So now if we go back to day 1, we've got some options here. We've got short, medium, and long. Okay, let's just for this say that short is I don't know, under 5. Medium can be like 5 to 20. Okay, something like 10 to 20, 5 to 20.
Yeah.
And then long can be over 20. I mean, pick the middle there. All right. Well, we already said you said you were going to do a 2K row, and I said short is under 5. Oh, we can't do a 2K row because some people are going to do that in 9 minutes. That's not going to fit into the template. That's why it's theoretical.
I would also contend that like short is relative. There's no hard and fast rules on there. We could consider 7 to 9 minutes to still be short.
Yeah, and we would probably. Yeah, it's short, right? So again, it's like, what is short? All right, now we go medium. So let's say that we want to do something around that 10 to 15 minutes, 12 to 15 minutes. We've got gymnastics, we've got weightlifting. We're going to apply a load-in and a rep scheme and maybe rounds for time or an AMRAP or something that's going to fit that time. Then we go to the long one for the 3, and we implement something that's going to get us to that 20-minute mark, right? Again, theoretical, because does it have to be 18? Does it have to be 20? Who cares? It's longer.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. But is it 15 reps or is it 12?
It doesn't matter.
Is it 15 reps or is it 30? That matters.
That matters.
That matters. Now, the question we always get is, well, what am I going to do on a gymnastics day when the time template says long? And we're like, okay, well, if you read the book and you've listened to Glassman, when we look at programming, we're looking at it from 2 perspectives, really training and practice. And this is something that we really struggle to wrap our heads around in the CrossFit space, is this idea of practice means we're not getting a good workout in. But we cannot forget what makes us also a little bit more unique versus other programs, right? This neurological aspect of coordination, accuracy, agility, balance. So, all right, well, this is where the theoretical part is important. We're going to do a skill day. And I know that doesn't sound exciting, and it might be boring, and that's okay. Don't come that day, but I guarantee if you do, you will get better. I promise you that.
Well, we can come. I want to come back to that. So, Cody, please make a note on that, because there are creative ways to do that. So I think in the context of an affiliate in a business where largely the metric for the success of your business is the frequency with which people come in. So if I'm programming things that would negatively impact people's attendance, there's large argument that you should stop doing that regardless of how it falls in line with the programming, lecture. But there are creative ways to do that. And that is where I think you start moving into the art and really understanding of programming.
Exactly. So yeah. And even on I mean, I personally think you can go long on a gymnastics day, but it would be the structure.
It's not hard.
It's not hard. It's just, and this is the whole thing.
Chelsea is a perfect example.
Fantastic.
It's a 30-minute workout.
Well, it's triplet though. I'm saying single.
Oh, just a single.
Single.
I mean, just do EMOM style.
Exactly. That you can do it. And lost my train of thought. Yep, it's gone. Lighthouse moment. That's what we're going to call that. from now on.
Beacon Lighthouse.
The
Yep.
Beacon Lighthouse, but it's theoretical and you can deviate. And even just that conversation, if you're not a programmer, you're like, I could do that. Oh, that actually sounds pretty fun. And maybe I don't program for the gym, but could I like pseudo program and just get a sense of it? And oh, now I'm forced to do a long gymnastics single modality day. Oh man, I'm going to have to really think about what's going to go into that so that I can inspire my people, make them better, get them excited. Now I'm a better coach because I'm going to the internet. I'm asking people that are good at gymnastics, what would you do? What would you do? It's all out there. That's how programming, if you're not a programmer, can help you be a better coach.
So your education is exercise. No, what is it? What's your degree in?
Exercise physiology, exercise
okay.
science, something like that.
Exercise science. Okay. So I think this is an interesting question. So when you've been talking about like, how do I start to put workouts together? You've talked about the big three. So load, reps, time. Obviously there's other variables in here. So we've talked about the modalities. We haven't talked a ton about format for the most part, which is okay, or kind of priority, if you will. So think task, time, or heavy. And then there's functionality. So, and this is where I think people that have, let's say you do come from an exercise science or exercise phys background, where you have at least let's call it rudimentary understanding of human movement. How do I take that information and then pair it with this? Because when we say variance, for the record, we are not, that is totally different than random. Cody, I don't know if you can pull this up. Can you pull up the definition of random so that we can just read it on the screen? And then we're going to look at variance. Yeah, random is with no thought or anything, right? It's just like literally we're just picking some shit out of a hat. And notice that in this conversation that Denise and I are having, at no point, with the exception of like just, what does that say? Random. Made, done, happening, or chosen without method or conscious decision. Yeah, so none of that is happening, right? So now can you pull up variance, Cody? And nothing that we've done so far. Yeah, the factor quality of being different, divergent, inconsistent, right? Disagreeing or quarreling. I guess I am the physical embodiment of variance. Okay.
So a picture of you and under images.
Yeah, right. All right, cool. You can pull down. So, and again, I think the point there is that like, you're not just pulling things out of a hat. If you really start to nerd out on this, like there is a ton of thought. It is actually the complete opposite of random. Like there is an immense amount of thought and evaluation that goes into this with regard to designing workouts. And this is, and we haven't even gotten to like what I consider advanced programming. We're talking about like just the basic format for like putting workouts together.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that you pulled the priority and the scheme up, because this is a personal preference for me. That's the last thing I usually think about, honestly. And I just look at, well, have we been a little heavy on for time or the task? But there's always that incentive for time to push people a little harder. But the more you educate your members on this stuff, they'll push on those AMRAPs if you give them a goal of how many rounds they need to be getting. So personally for me, that's not something I put up the top first. I'll do like the time.
No, I don't think it is either. I think it's, this is personally how I do it. Like I'll have like, call it 75% of the workout, like on paper. And then you can play around with flip-flopping a workout between time and task. Be like, would that be better with some sort of time constraint on it so the people that go a little bit faster? Or should I just like chop the rep scheme down a little bit so that they can move through the rounds at a faster rate in order to maintain intensity?
And that's the conversation. That is whether it should be one of those two. That's the conversation that you should be having, not I need an AMRAP because I haven't done one in 3 days.
Right. But again, I think that is where you'll get there, right? But this is where it becomes fun because you start to really look at this. And I think this is where you can get really creative because programming is fun. Now you're going to write a lot of dumb shit. Like, let's just be honest with you. Like you're going to write a lot of workouts. You're like, that is not at all what I intended. But I do think that priority and the function are typically the things. Those are how I I would call those are like my sanity checks. Like those are easy shifts on the workout. If I wrote everything down and then I can come back and I'm like, okay, this is heavy on overhead pushing, or those time domains are all the same. And I can go through and I can overlay function and priority to start to mix that up, so that now this, because you can have two workouts that look very similar, but if you change one of those two things, function or priority, like all of a sudden it's a totally different workout. It's not the same at all anymore with regard to like how it feels, how it's executed, what the outcome is. And I think that's the beauty of all of that. And I think this, what you're starting to outlay is like, these are all the variables when I'm writing programming. Right. And then when you're assessing, like, let's just say you're looking at a week's worth of programming, generally speaking, if I'm looking at 7 days, 5 days, Monday through Friday, what are you looking for across 5 days?
Well, I haven't programmed in a while, but what I used to look for is I like to do a heavy day. There's got to be one in a week. And that doesn't have to necessarily be a standalone heavy day for that day, but it can either be that, or we're going to maybe lift heavy in different planes.
I was going to say, what does heavy mean, generally speaking?
So if I'm saying a true like heavy day, I'm thinking under 25 reps across a rep scheme of a 5x5 or a 7x2, where the goal is to increase load and lift something hopefully heavier than you've lifted before or close to. And there's a bunch of rest, and that's all we do. We focus on that, smashing your central nervous system and going heavy. But you can also, so that I'd like to do one of those a week.
Okay.
If not a week, like one in every other cycle, where it's actual and heavy day.
Okay.
But then I also like to put in a heavy lift in a heavy movement in a workout. So you're breathing heavy under a heavy load. That's not an absolute staple either. It could be, again.
So can you give an example of what that, because I have a couple things that come to mind, but like, what would examples of that be if you were going to program them?
Yeah. So we could do shoulder to overhead. Let's call it like 205, 145, 10 down to 2, paired with, a 200-meter run, something like that.
Okay.
So you're lifting heavy. It's not close to your maxes, but it's something that you need to be really, really confident in that you can do for one set unbroken or 2 sets that really impacts your ability to do other things well. So like you'll be heavy breathing after this. And
it's going to slow you down, and there is high likelihood of having to break the set.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it could be it could be like a 5 down to 1 of like a very heavy front squat where you wouldn't have to break it. But yeah, something that when you put that down, you're like, oof, yeah, right.
Yeah, you're either going to slow down or you're going to be hesitant to get back to it again, because you're going to need the recovery for it.
Yeah. And heavy also is dependent on the movement, right? So we could say a 155 deadlift for females and whatever that is, 275 for guys, is like a moderate
155, yeah.
225, 155. Yeah. And then, but if we take that and now we've got a shoulder to overhead, that had a very different impact on your body. So you have to look at, when you're looking at like the load, that can't be the only thing you're looking at. You have to look at the movement comparable to the load.
And that is what we were referring to earlier, which is function, right? So like upper body push versus a lower body pull from the floor. Like the load there totally changes the stimulus.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I like to put one of those in. Then I'm very cautious of too much shoulder intensive work in it. So that's something I'm looking at from a function standpoint.
Why?
But back to the shoulders are smaller. It's a smaller muscle. There's a lot more going on in that joint, where it takes, when your shoulders are sore, you're fully convinced you're injured. Like you're dead. It's so true, isn't it? Like
That
your
was
shoulder,
me. That was literally me last week. I was like, I couldn't like put my hands over my head. I was like, yeah, I
you're
was like,
dead,
we did a lot more shoulders than I thought we did this week. I was just like,
right?
oh.
But your hips can take a little bit more. Your legs can take a little bit more. So I'm just like very, especially with your average member. And by average, I do not mean, but less of a human being. I just mean who comes into our gym, like our
Yeah,
average
the normal
exercise.
run of the mill
Yeah.
person. Yeah, who
So I'm
doesn't
just very
like
cautious
post
of
on
that.
Instagram that they exercise for time.
I like to go below parallel, maybe 2 or 3 times a week with different loadings or different formats. Time period, let's get something in real short. Let's get like majority be like around that 8 to 15 minutes, and then but I am not one for I need to do one long every week. I can go a week or two without going close to 20 minutes, like, and then that's not something for me. Like maybe 15, 16, but I'm not like we have to do a 25-minute workout because we haven't.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think when you start having those conversations, those are affiliate and member dependent, meaning like you have found in your affiliate that people like certain things at certain times, right? So if I was to go back and look at historical data, what I will tell you with absolute certainty is that at CrossFit Rife, something that is kind of a little bit more of a banger, high volume, longer on the front end of the week actually sets the tone for the rest of the week and has fantastic attendance. So by design, which again would violate variance, we put those there. Now, is that perfect? No, but what I'm looking for is high frequency of training so that people can get the results today. So I'm going to put things that I know will have certain outcomes in certain places. So I can go the other direction where I'd say, I'm not putting a single, like a solo heavy day on Thursday. I'm not doing it. Why? Because I'll be standing in the gym by myself, listening to some horrific playlist that Jason Ackerman sent me that he told me is good. Right.
Yeah.
Now, should I do that? For sure. Is it going to impact attendance? Absolutely. And probably in a negative light. So I'm going to make the conscious decision to avoid that far more often than not. And if I do put a heavy day on there, what I'll tell you I would do is it would probably be a strength plus Metcon combo.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're speaking here to who is the programming for again, right? So an affiliate programming, and you got affiliate programming, and you've got programming that you put out into the community that can be done anywhere, and you're not confined by a class and membership and retention. And I like to call those two things like CrossFit.com is a fantastic expression of this. And I think linchpin too. I think this is, I could be wrong, but I think this might be Pat's mindset is we're programming for fitness. We're not programming for enjoy. We're not programming for whether you like it or not. We're not programming for whether you're going to keep doing the program. When we think about increasing work capacity across broad time and mole domains, this is the right thing. Now, if you take that and you put it into an affiliate, it's not that it can't work. It absolutely can. We've seen it work, but do you have to tweak a couple of things, i.e. let's put an exciting, sexy workout in on Monday to set the tone, and then let them know, hey, Tuesday, this is what we got. And if you give it to them on Monday after that class, you tell them, we're going to do a 500-meter row for time. That's your workout. And you're like, this is what it's going to look like. And you're explaining to them how bad this workout's going to be. They're more like, okay, I'll come. But if they just see it on a Sunday night, they're less likely, right, to want to come. And so there is some art of balancing the business with the product, if you want to call it that, the program. Yeah. Now, just to be clear, Jay, I would program a single like 7x1 press on a Thursday.
I know you would, and
I would,
and
I'd be like,
I would applaud your bravery.
Those 3 people show up. We're gonna get real good today, and we're gonna have a blast. And this is also the disclaimer: I do not own an affiliate.
Right. So I
would still do it.
Right, and I do think that it's okay to have that conversation, because there will naturally exist some friction with regard to like, okay, I'm going to program this thing in a vacuum. And because and here's why I think the conversation is okay. Number one, because it is something that can be worked around, right? You can solve that riddle. But number two, all things being equal, what is the number one variable of somebody getting results in any fitness program?
Intensity.
Okay.
No, the number. I do. I think the relative intensity and the consistency of just showing up every day.
So I think the second one is actually more important there. So the consistency of showing up, because they could hit intensity once a week.
Right.
And I think you have to take that into consideration, because my job is to get them fit. And I know they will get fit if they show up consistently. Now, my job becomes to be able to lay on this variance piece intelligently in the right places to get them the intensity, the relative intensity that they need in a well-balanced manner. But I still have to take those things into consideration. And again, I don't think it means you can never do certain things. I'm typically try to stay away from never. But it will be far less often if I know what the outcome of that will be. Because the reality is, if nobody shows up on those days, well, they're definitely not getting the intensity, any sort of intensity. So what does it matter? And I think that's okay, right? But I do think the crux of all of this is, when you look at it, it is all of this stuff is built on the core tenets of this programming lecture. You just have to apply it practically with regard to like your affiliate and your athletes. And this is where I think people miss the boat, which is like, if you don't understand some of these things, you're going to miss the target no matter what, regardless of what scenario I put you in. Because you're not factoring in all of the variables with regard to that. So
I like what you said about, yes, consistent for sure. You have to be in the gym. And I think, I've certainly have lived in that space of like, this is the way and this is the only way and you cannot deviate and plague on your house. But the more I listen to people way smarter than me, which is many, I'm like, getting people in the gym is the most important thing. And as a business owner, you have to do those things. But back to your thing, underneath the tenets of what CrossFit is fundamentally. And if we don't understand that, we're going to miss the boat on the results we want to get, for sure.
Which is the crux of this whole thing, which is like, the only thing that matters is that people get fitter.
And we have them forever. And it's people can look at variance across a week. I'll give you a good example in a minute, but that was a horrible week of variance. And we haven't even talked about redundancy as part of variance, as it is, right? Not everything's complementary. But are you looking at variance on a very micro level weekly? Are you looking at variance on a macro level monthly, and even bigger macro level yearly? And what have you covered across the year? Because truth be told, if you really want to assess your programming, it's going to take some time to get the data, to get, did this work for my gym or did it not? And if I'm ever only just looking at it week by week, I'm also not understanding a tenon. So the example I give you is this, and it's painful.
You're too zoomed in, but yeah, I want to hear what you have to say.
I'm too what?
No, if you're only looking at it in the context of a week, like whoever's doing the programming, you're zoomed too far in.
Right. And also you get emotional. So it pains me to admit this, because Austin Malleolo was right. So it's very hard for me to admit that, but he was. And we were doing a week of programming, and we were just pulling. I don't know if I've told you this before, but we were just pulling like every day in different planes, like from the ground, horizontal, above head, like out to everything. I was like, and then Friday was Fran, right? Where we pull. And I know it's only a 45 reps, but we're pulling. And I'm like, how are we supposed to get people to intensity and get PRs if we're doing all this pulling Monday through Thursday? I'm like, this is bull. I was like, it was one of those moments where this is crazy. Anyway, we do this thing. I do the programming, and I go and PR on Fran on Friday. And not only me, like a lot of people in our gym did. And that was the first time that I saw the beauty of redundance across like a week, where that was a really beautiful expression of variance in the macro sense. Don't do that every time. That's a mistake that will bite you in the butt. But you can, again, we can't go above parallel again. We did it yesterday. I'm like, well, we did it heavy yesterday, and today we're doing a wall ball. So same but different. Now, are we going to...
Go ahead.
No, I think sometimes we get a little wrapped around the axle by that zoomed in approach of like, can't do that. We did that yesterday. Not going to happen. And John Gilson once said something to me, again, faster, John Gilson, like awesome. He goes, if you're in the jungle, you get chased by a tiger on a Monday, you outrun it somehow. And then the next day, that same tiger chases you. You go, whoa, I ran yesterday. And even like more less embellished than that is, what were we doing before CrossFit? We were running every day. We went for a jog every day, right? And it's, yes.
Well, you were a soccer player. I was a basketball player. At no point did we walk out onto the pitch or into the court and be like, guys, I think we're just not going to run today. We'd be like, well, you're cut. So congratulations.
And you're not going to be like squatting heavy 5 days in a row. That's not what I'm saying. But there is value.
Well, there's a place, but there's a place for that. So going back to the redundancy, redundancy can be appropriately used if you have a good grasp of loading, right? And loading over certain sequences, over a certain number of days, all that stuff. Because if you take, a huge component of CrossFit, which is Olympic weightlifting, they're going to be squatting and pulling almost every day that they train. And a high level weightlifter will train something to the tune of 5, maybe 6 days a week, probably closer to 5. And they will be squatting and pulling every one of those days. Now, where you start to kind of modulate that is load or overall training volume across those days.
And nothing else.
Right.
They're not doing Metcons with it.
No, they're doing nothing else. I mean, they'll throw, like, if you have a good program, they'll have like a pretty robust kind of like accessory aspect to that. But it will all be training those same patterns, right? Whether it's all going to be posterior heavy, pulling, lots of single leg work, stuff like that. But my point is, this is like, redundancy is not bad. It can be used very effectively. And I would argue it's almost required in certain instances if I'm going to want to get a particular outcome. Like, you're going to have to do that to create some sort of super compensation. Like, so it's not the devil, right? Where I think it can be lost is if it's over too long of a period of time, or you're not factoring in other things. And so like Joby puts in here, he's like, the problem here is when redundancy becomes a bias. We're like, I just like to do something, so we do it all the time.
I know Jobin. He did
dude.
He did the. Do you know him?
Yeah, he's an affiliate of you.
Heck yeah, Joe. He came to CDP. Nice.
Yep.
Great guy.
Yep.
Yeah, so, he's right. He's right. And that's the same with anything is, right, we say this in the level 1 programming lecture, things only become a mistake when you continue to repeat them.
Okay, so let's switch gears here for a second. So common mistakes or common pitfalls of programming, as according to the book of Denise Thomas.
Common pitfalls of programming, too much volume. And I say that not because it's bad.
I was going to say, elaborate on that.
Yeah, because this needs to be said. Doing more volume, doing a bunch of volume is never bad. It's the fact that as an affiliate, you have a 60-minute time constraint. So the amount of volume you're doing within a very short period of time can lead to burnout and injury. I'm not saying that it will, but it can. And it's not even 60 minutes. You're probably squeezing that in 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Yeah. So too much volume is a huge pitfall for what we want. If we have 90-minute classes, go ahead, do a little more by all means, but you got to give people the rest and you got to be able to coach them, so.
I just put in, we have like we're creating our programming workflow, and I put in our kind of like sanity check when we're done with all of it. One of the sanity check items in there is a volume check. I'm like, check the week. Did we inadvertently do too much of something that I can look at and with great confidence be like, that is going to put people down for several days, at which point they will not train, at which point Why?
Yeah. Yeah. Another one is programming to please your members and not programming based on our first principles of CrossFit. So not that
Can
you're
you give
not
an example of
considering,
that?
yeah, not that you're not considering what they like and what they enjoy, but selling your soul and almost changing what you believe in so that your members come in. And it used to look like CrossFit, but now it doesn't anymore. And it kind of does a little bit, but it's not what it was. And it's not why you initially probably loved CrossFit. So it's this, I think that's the best way I can describe it is, are you just looking at your members as dollar signs and you're going to program in a certain way to keep members? Because I think that's a huge mistake for so many reasons. One, they're not going to optimize their fitness. They'll get fit. They'll definitely get fit. But you are losing maybe, and maybe not, but I would say you're losing your purpose and your vision. And now what you used to see as your home is now somebody else's home. And you're just like this visitor and you're stressed out all the time.
Well, I think that is where an understanding of the art of programming can save you, which is like, hey, people don't like this. And I'm like, well, they don't like that variation, but that's because like we could probably look at that. We could unpack some things and we could clearly identify either some biases or some sort of routine or some sort of, I don't know, like some sort of programming bias that you have put in there that has led them to not like it. And we just have to program around that or program ourselves out of it. With regard to that, but like you can do it, like there is a factor of fun with regard to programming that matters. If it like you because you can program workouts that really check all of the boxes and are fun, and you can program workouts that check all of the boxes and are not fun. Going back to attendance. And the idea is, again, if we're trying to change people's lives, well, we have to consider, will this impact their attendance? Like you have to. And I know it's uncomfortable for people, but like you have to consider that variable. Like, is somebody going to show up for that? Because if they're not, then I'm not dying on that sword. It's just silly.
Yeah.
And this, we were kind of talking before we hit record, is like the art is like, how do I program in some of like the vegetables that people don't want to do without maybe making it the main course, right? Like L sits. Like, I don't know that you should necessarily put L sits as the main course. Could it fall in line with good programming? Absolutely. Is anybody going to show up for it? Probably not.
Yeah, but I think I give pushback on that a little because first of all, I did a workout from .com once and it was rowing and L sits and it stayed with me to this day. And it was very, very hard, like harder than I ever thought it could be. And I do not have a good L. I'm not like this perfect toe pointer.
What was the workout?
Oh my gosh, what was it? It was a given amount of, it was a certain amount of rowing distance and accumulate 30 seconds of an L sit hold for rounds. God, what were it?
I think in some of this, again, that's the art, right? Like you can program those things in where it would be an engaging training session. But my point is like, you could also program and they're like, that's really boring and nobody wants to do that.
Yeah.
Because of the program design.
Right. And I think any movement could be considered boring if the carrot hasn't been dangled ahead of time. So like as an L sit, if we can throw this into warm-ups, even just getting them on the ground and having their fingers down and lifting their legs and holding in like almost like a seated V up and then little drills and doing it as an afterburner and partnering up and them seeing how hard it is. And that now it's been dangled that they want to get better, and you do that over a given amount of time, and then maybe just like throw it into a workout where it's not like the main macronutrient, right? But it's in there. Like you're going to try and look at the clock, try and hold for 30 seconds. When it hits 30, move on. So it's not like you just sat at the LSAT being like picking your nose and like, this is
now what you just talked about there is lesson planning, right? That's where you would factor that in. Now, before we have that conversation about lesson planning, yeah, Denise is thirsty. This has been an intense conversation.
I'm hot.
We're gonna take a quick break to share a story with you guys. Hey guys, Fern here. Real quick, I just want to share a quick success story from one of the hundreds of gyms that we've been able to help inside of Affiliate U. And our mission and best hour of their day is to ultimately improve and grow the greater CrossFit community by building better boxes and creating better businesses with better coaching staff so we can bring CrossFit to the masses. Check it out. And if you think we can help you, don't hesitate to reach out.
One of my biggest wins working with Affiliate U was stepping back from constantly being in the business working versus being on the business working. You know, I was coaching all the classes, here all day, every day, doing everything. And it took me a long time to kind of loosen those reins. But in doing so, I've been better able to help more people because my impact is being better used on my team. And then when I am coaching classes, I'm coaching better classes. And that then shows my team more what we're looking for, and it makes everyone better.
Dennis, my man.
His gym is clean.
As gym should be.
Is that an Affiliate U? Was he always
damn
clean?
Right it is.
Yeah.
Well, dude, we should do a podcast, Cody, on cleaning the gym. I just bought this new little floor sweeper. People are like, what are you doing? I'm like, I just like it. Just bumming around with my little floor sweeper.
Is it called Jess?
No.
You're like, no. Yeah, I'd like to see how that went down.
Because the floor, in the sense that the floor sweeper does what I tell it to. My wife does not do what I tell her to. So back on track. So let's take all of this, and what you were referring to is there's like, how do I start to introduce some of these things? And that we start to bleed over into lesson planning. So obviously we can't do a full podcast here on lesson planning, but like big takeaway with regard to like programming with regard to the lesson planning with regard to the topic of programming. What are the key takeaways people need to consider?
Lesson planning with regards to programming. I think that when you're programming, you need to consider what your gym has. First of all, you cannot be programming things where you only have one GHD. I would probably still do that because I'd be
but
like,
I have one rules. But I have one. Yeah, pirate rules are the best.
Fight.
But which sometimes when I say pirate rules, people don't know what that means. But anyway, this is why nobody should have one air runner. Like, don't program that. That's dumb. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and it really is impactful. So I think when you lesson plan, and I'll probably go the opposite. When you're lesson planning and you're basically creating a math equation of where things are going to go and how long it takes, you quickly start to realize that the programming that you thought would be a great idea is not possible. Right? You're like, wait a second.
This literally can't be done.
This is going to be a great workout, but it's not going to. I can't. And so they help each other out in a sense. So I think the programming has to be effective, and it's only effective if it's done well, right? As you said, the service, the product is only successful if you can provide a service that's going to make the product come alive, i.e. get results. So for that reason, simplifying the programming makes the delivery a little easier. And I don't mean easier as though it's elementary. I mean that we can really put mechanics and consistency at the forefront of things to where we eventually get the intensity. So, I think that you need to consider how the program is going to look on the floor, and then ask yourself, is this a good question? And I don't know if I'm answering your question
No, you are. And this is because this comes up quite a bit with regard to, and actually have this kind of led me into that question, which is like, what do you guys think of gyms where they have classes following other gyms programming? And
Okay.
and that kind of leads into like, okay, when the programming comes to you, there needs to be an evaluation done on that programming so that you can deliver it well.
Yes. Yep. That's exactly what we said before is, so I did programming and lesson planning, a little of the programming, but all the lesson planning for CompTrain when I was there. And it was great. And I learned a lot, like 900 gyms across all continents, different time zones, kilos, pounds, big gyms, little gyms, you know, you name it. And there was this sometimes issue of, well, that's not going to work for my gym. And it got to the point where I tried to cater for everyone, right? Give all the scales, give them a partner workout for every workout, give them a couple of options for if they didn't have rowers or ski ergs or all these things. And ultimately what ended up happening, there was still a gym that didn't help. So it was this, look, here's what we have, but this is not going to fit perfectly for your gym. Take a look at your gym, take a look at the rowers, take a look at the pull-up bars, take a look at your clientele, look at the loading. Maybe that loading is outlandishly ridiculous for your fittest. Let's pop that down a little bit. And you are still going to have to do some work. So then my question is, you're going to do all that work anyway. You should just program for yourself, you know, at least that's,
Well,
I know that's hard. It's time consuming.
Well, yeah. So let's just say somebody is not prepared to take on that load. This is where the argument for outsourcing some of your time, it does make sense depending on where you're at in your entrepreneurial journey, if you will. But here's an overarching principle that I think would help everybody, because this has been a common theme that I've been because a lot of these issues, I would argue they're self-inflicted, meaning I was doing this and this came up, and then, you know, the short answer is I'm like, well, don't do that. You know, and I was commenting on Spencer Nix had posted something about programming on there. And the concept is simply this: whether you program or whether you get your programming from a third party, when you look at that, when I'm looking at the program, the lesson plan, don't program yourself into a problem, whatever that means, whether it's a logistical problem, whether it's a safety problem, whether it's a people are going to bitch and moan problem, right? Like, you have control over that. So if you look at the workout and your first instinct is that's going to be a problem, is it a solvable problem? Does it require a minor tweak? Does it require a complete overhaul? I don't know. That's up to you. But the point is, don't program yourself into a problem. Cassie and I were just working, looking at the program, and that was one of the other things. I'm like, another checklist of like, anything on here have a logistical is going to be a logistical nightmare. And he's like, we only have 10 ski ergs. And I was like, you're right. That is going to be a problem. So how do we adjust this workout so that I don't create a nightmare for the coach and their ability to execute a good lesson plan, i.e. effectively coach and have people move better? So
yeah. Well, that I was going to say that also comes back to the absolute, well, it says ski erg. We must ski erg for this amount of meters. And if we do not, we will not get fit. And I'm like, no, you just row, do an assault bike. I mean, it's going to be okay.
Or adjust the distance and stagger start, you know, get a little bit of creative to maintain, you know, to keep whatever integrity of that workout you want. But like, you can take it and you can slightly modify it. And I try to encourage people. I'm like, if something is like, hey, that's going to be a little bit of a problem, it's not just like throw the baby out the bathwater. We got to come up with a whole new thing. It's just like, could you adjust it just slightly and still get a pretty similar outcome? Because if you could, I would argue that you should do that.
And then, if that's the case, we're staggering it. There's going to be a lag time of you know,
90 seconds, group, whatever.
2 minutes, 3 minutes. Does something else have to give?
Right. Or it's just like, hey, you guys are going to start on that one.
But meaning in terms of what you intended on doing. This was my plan, but now I'm going to need to run like 2 heats maybe, or staggered, whatever that is. this has got to go.
Right.
And it's, I love that. Don't program yourself into a problem. And, but it does come down to, well, the members, we hear this, the members will be upset if they don't get to do what's on the board. And that is a culture thing too.
Well, it's also a solvable problem, which is, if that's the case, then don't let that, whatever that is, like, again, don't program yourself into a problem. Change that before it hits the board, right?
Mhm.
Like, don't put that on the board if you're not going to do it, right? So like, we
Right.
used to do this years ago when it was just like, I forget, we were outsourcing program and we were just being lazy turds. And like, it would say like ski erg, and we don't have any ski ergs. And all of a sudden people are like, well, how come we don't have any ski ergs? And I was like, well, that feels like a self-inflicted wound. Like, I could have just changed it to rowing. And, you know, so I think it's just one of those things. I'm like, just do the legwork on the front end, and don't. And again, when I say problem, I mean any type of problem. That's why I just put in bitches and moans in there, which is like, if you know by putting that variation that you're not going to be able to do in the class is going to cause you a customer service situation, we'll call it, don't write it.
Yeah.
Literally don't do that. That's
It's-
like, hey, you know, that's like saying, I'm going to send my wife a text that I know she's going to be pissed about. I'm like, or we could not.
And don't text myself into a problem.
Don't text myself into a
But
problem.
Jay, also goes back to one of Greg's articles, like the Glassman chipper, the garage gym. If you pull that up, and let's just again go back to first principles of CrossFit.
Can you pull that up, Cody?
You can do CrossFit in a very small space with very little equipment.
Very well, mind you.
Very well, and get very, very fit with like a dumbbell and maybe a pull-up bar and a rower, right? And a barbell, let's just say. But like, I think this idea of variance can get a little crazy sometimes too. I mean, if you...
What's the name of the article, Denise?
It's the Glassman chipper, and the article is the garage gym. One of my favorites, because...
What is it? The what gym?
Garage.
Garage? Can you
Well, I
say
said garage like
can
you
you
guys,
say-
because you're posh.
Could you say aluminum? for me, please?
Aluminium.
Yeah, she's
But
adding
I'll
letters
say
and syllables
garage.
in it.
Garage, because I'm a northerner. But people down in South say garage. So I've sold my
Garage.
soul. But yeah, it's the garage gym, and it gives you like a budget. And, you know, if you're opening your gym, what do you need? And it's beautiful. And it just literally gives me a big slap in the face every time to be like, stop being a diva. The CrossFit can be done with this equipment.
I think, so speaking of that, so like, I think one of the best things that ever happened to me personally from a trainer and from a programmer standpoint is 2009, maybe. I was deployed to Iraq, and we only had so much equipment. And we started off with handful of, yeah, you can pull that up, Cody. We start off with a handful of people.
Yeah.
And then by the time, what year is this, Cody? What year is this article? This is like early 2002. Damn. And we only had so much equipment. We ended up like building a ton of stuff. But by the time we left, we would have classes of 40 for the day when we were there, because everybody's just like, dude, I want to get in on this. And it really stretched my creativity from a programming standpoint to like, hey, how do we still do this when we don't have all the bells and whistles? And how do we still get people to train effectively? And as to this day, I would argue that 6 months had a significant impact on my understanding of programming to keep it simple and still get a lot of results.
Yeah, it's this. I love this article on it. And honestly, the less equipment you have, the harder CrossFit actually is, because you're doing thrusters, you're doing front squats, you're doing presses, you're running. Oh, don't get me even started on the running. How many times are we like, we could talk about scaling all day long, but you know, you've got like a Helen workout with a 400-meter run and 21 swings and 12 pull-ups, and you've got a good Helen time. Let's say you're sub 8, closer to even like 7.5, right? You're bucking it.
Yeah,
and,
you're running like you're in danger if that's your time.
Right, but let's say you're running a 140, which is fast.
Mm-hmm.
The next step is, got to make this harder. Let's go heavier on the bell.
Or
Right.
it's run 130.
Yeah, nobody wants to do that. So it's just like, we don't need to make things more complicated via programming. We just need to get fitter moving in better positions, and let let those tests be what they are. It's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
It's gonna hurt, and it should hurt. And one day you might hit a plateau and not be able to get any faster, but you're still gonna do it that way every time because it's the way it is. And if we change it, we change it. So
well, there will be a natural evolution there, like that will just happen. So if you max out, so think about somebody who maxes out Fran, right? So like you can do it in like, let's just call it sub 3 for most people. It's just like really no need to like keep trying. But like if you can go sub 230, listen, I'm rooting for you. There will be a natural evolution with regard to how you program and the things that create intensity for you if you've gotten yourself to a sub 3 Fran.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, and it's okay to go like a heavy Fran, but let's call it that. Like, we don't need to make Fran different.
No. And heavy is relative, right? It doesn't mean 135. Going from 95 to 115 is going to be plenty spicy enough.
105. But
yeah,
I guess
10 pounds.
We digress. Yeah. But it's, it comes back to, again, the simplicity of CrossFit's principles. Oh, can you hear
There's Rory. There's Ro.
She's got Ro. She always does this when I'm on your call. She knows. Hey.
She's
good God. She's small, but she sounds like an absolute
she's
savage.
Saying hello to me. She's like, I miss you, Fern.
Come here. But it comes back to what are we programming for? Fitness. Who are we programming for? Members. Why are we programming to get those results? And how is through the coaching and the mechanics and the consistency and all the things that we say. And the more we put in, the less we can do that really, really well. And I think that and I say all, it's not all because it's some hard stuff, but there's so much to be done in such a simple way that we can tilt the lens onto that. And then when you get to that point, that you can add a little bit more here or there, that's fine, but you've got to look at your whole class. It can't just be a couple of people that you're trying to satisfy. That's another pitfall, is who are you listening to, outside of you.
Right.
So I have this one athlete that wants to compete. All right, we're going to do X programming for everyone. Like
proven it is. We didn't quite get to scaling, but we can do a whole nother podcast on that by itself. But I think this is a good place to wrap up. Cody, can you pull up page 82 on the manual where it says conclusion? And we're just going to read that because I think it's worth reading.
On scaling?
Yep. No, just in the programming. It actually is in reference to scaling, I think. Yep. So it says, and I think this is in the programming lecture. Conclusion: athletes and trainers should focus on movement proficiency before adding speed and load. Workouts should be scaled significantly for at least a month, particularly with regard to intensity and volume. The period of scaling workouts, especially load, might continue for months and years as the athlete develops the requisite capacities. With appropriate scaling, an athlete will make significant fitness gains by working at his or her relative level of physical and psychological tolerances. That's it.
I actually was listening to Dave Castro's programming lecture on YouTube. It's really, really like old, from a long time ago.
The old one. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe that's a good reference for the viewers to watch, because I mean, Dave's a phenomenal programmer, right? He gets it more than any of us. And the thing, it's just so simple. Like, and he talks about that. Hey, mechanics, consistency, then and only then intensity. So let's take care of our people by programming things that are not going to create a problem, that are going to keep them healthy and coming back, that's going to excite them a little bit, but we're not selling our souls. We're going to keep our principles, and we're going to do our level best as coaches to be better at the service we provide, because people get better and they expect more. So we do need those two things. We need a good product, and we have it. CrossFit, constantly varied functional movement intensity. We need the right people to deliver that, which is through excellence in putting a premium on movement. And that requires doing the common and commonly well. Which if you want to do that, you should register for the Coaches Development Program with one and only Denise Thomas. And we're going to break here for a short commercial on the coach development program. Sign up. Okay, back to you, Jay.
No, but I heard you're going to Trish's in CrossFit Babylon for 5 days.
Babylon. I cannot wait. I love her. She's got some high expectations, and
she's rad.
She is rad, and yeah, it's gonna be awesome. But yeah, this is great.
Well, as always, thank you for your insights. This has been amazing. Most importantly, because Mr. Jason Ackerman was not here, but I think the viewers got a lot of this. I think there's a lot of good stuff. Any last words of wisdom you'd like to leave the viewers with?
Just that I think anybody that's listening to this podcast and ones like it, thank you for everything you're doing. I think that you guys have a very hard job coaching a diverse population that all want different things. And we have a lot of things we coach. We're the generalists, and you're doing great. And if you're listening to this call, it means you care. So I just want to say thank you to your listeners, because we're changing the world one air squat at a time. Below parallel.